Test 1 2, test 1 2. Okay, this is a game that I just got finished playing, and it was pretty epic. We had some really interesting plays here, some fun stacks interaction, and I wanted to record it and break it all down for you. So we have God's Bro Bob playing Kelith, Sunmane Familiar. Whenever a commander you control attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And it has partner. He has partnered it with Rograk, son of Roga. First strike, menace, trample, and partner. 0 mana commander, 2 mana commander. Pretty cool, pretty aggressive deck. We have Diosamo. Wait. Diosama. Oh, Diosama Notice Me. That's what it is. It's Diosama Notice Me. Anime reference there. He's playing Rayan, Last of the Abzan. 3 mana legendary creature. It enters the battlefield with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. Whenever a creature you control dies or is put into the command zone, if it had 1 or more +1/+1 counters on it, you may put that many +1/+1 counters on target creature. That's pretty interesting. And it's partnered with Yoshimaru. So 2 partner commanders here. Kind of fun there. And whenever another legendary permanent enters, put a +1/+1 on Yoshimaru. So these are +1/+1 counter synergies. These are kind of +1/+1. Then we have Captain Sisay, 4 mana, 2 green, white. Tap, search your library for a legendary card, reveal that card, put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. So pretty cool. Really old school, legendary, classic commander in Captain Sisay. Then I am playing Neheb, Dreadhorde Champion. This is one of my favorite CEDH decks. It is my favorite CEDH deck. I think that it's super cool. It is 4 mana, 2 red, legendary zombie minotaur warrior creature. It has trample, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, you may discard any number of cards. If you do, draw that many cards and add that much red mana. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. So essentially, if you deal combat damage and you have 7 cards in hand, you can discard 7 of your cards and draw 7 new cards, get 7 mana. What I really like about this commander is that it allows you to play very circumstantial cards, and if you don't want those cards in that specific instance that you're playing them, you can just discard it and draw new cards. So I think that's a really fun commander. So what have we been missing? Turn 1 Forest Lighted Halfling for Mountain Melon with the Captain Sisay build. I had just a turn 1 play with a mountain. We have Rograk on a turn 1 play with a Mox Opal and an LED. Yoshimaru with a turn 1 play off of a command tower. Mountain Melon follows up his Delighted Halfling with an Ancient Tomb and a Fauna Shaman and Kataki War Mage. So that's... Okay, so Kataki is white. So that's a pretty strong start. He has some stacks in play. He has a tutor. He has ramp in multiple ways. So Mountain Melon's off to a really strong start. My strategy coming into this game with my opening hand is get this One Ring out as soon as possible. I also have this Vial of Galadriel, which is some new tech that I've been experimenting with. Essentially, if I discard my entire hand with Neheb, I draw that many cards +1, which is super cool. I really don't like this Kataki War's Wage because I have this Mox Diamond. I also have this Vial of Galadriel and the One Ring that I want to get into play. So I pitch my Final Fortune, which is an extra turn spell. I could have pitched Past in Flames, but I was thinking at the time that it could have been more useful than an extra turn spell that would just lose me the game. So I pitch Fury. I kill the War's Wage. I kill Kataki. I also kill Fauna Shaman. And I aim a damage at Rograk. In retrospect, I probably should have aimed it at Yoshimaru. He just gets bigger faster. But I aimed it at Rograk. But God's Bro Bob, I'll just call him Bob from now on, he casts an Ephemerate to save Rograk, which is a little bit interesting. Like, think I probably would have let it die. I don't know why he put his Mox Opal and LED in the graveyard. I think that was a mistake. Maybe he didn't realize that the War's Wage was dead, that Kataki was dead. But anyway, so that was a good turn. I was able to cast some Mox Opal, File, and Fury, getting rid of 2 really important pieces from Mountain Melon's board. Okay, so Bob realized his mistake. He brought back his Mox Opal and LED. He's starting to buff his Rograk. This is kind of a concerning board for me. My commander does rely on dealing combat damage to opponents, and when they have beefy creatures, that makes it pretty difficult. Like Neheb does have trample and 5 power, but he only has 4 toughness, so he can be double blocked pretty effectively. So here we have an Urborg, so that turns all lands on. And he plays a Vraska Joins Up. It put a death touch counter on each creature you control. Whenever a legendary creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Oh, that's a cool card. I think that's a new one for me. I haven't really seen that one. But yeah, that's pretty solid, especially with a commander that gets big like that. So he doesn't even attack. I'm kind of surprised he doesn't attack. Could have drawn a card there. I think Dio-sama is a little bit inexperienced. I don't think Rayhan is CEDH level. Here we just have Captain Sisay out. And obviously I wasn't able to see hands during the game, but it does look like Mountain Melon is mana light in retrospect, watching it back. So I draw this Conspiracy Theorist. I'm really just looking for lands here. I want to build up my mana base. I have this File, which can draw me cards when I'm empty-handed, so that's really good with comboing with Neheb. And I have this One Ring, which I'm trying to just like use to refill my hand. So I play this, and I am able to get a land, so I'm pretty happy with that turn. Have protection from everything, so I don't need to worry about taking like these pot shots, like an extra Rograk attack, Kelith attack, Yoshimaru. So I'm pretty happy with that. We just have a Basalt Monolith played from Bob, and he's attacking with his commanders, buffing them up, because whenever one of his commanders attacks, he can put a counter on it. And he attacks Mountain Melon. So from Dio-sama Notice Me, we have an Underground Mortuary, keeps it on top, plays an Avacyn's Pilgrim, and then attacks with Yoshimaru. And he's attacking Bob. And let's see, does he draw a card? Let's find out. So looks like he does draw a card there. Wait, man, I don't think he actually drew a card. Interesting. Anyway, so Mountain Melon finally draws a land. He tutors up for Kogla, which is pretty scary. He's able to play Urza Saga, exiling the Spirit Guide, and then he actually has enough mana to play this Kogla, which was scary. I didn't have any creatures out, so I was kind of fine, but I really didn't want my file to get destroyed, which is concerning. Like, if he sends the Kogla at me, he could blow this up. I top deck a Deflecting Swat, and then I draw into this Lightning Greaves. So I have the option right now. I have 6 mana. I could play Neheb. I could play and equip the Lightning Greaves and attack. What happens if I attack? Well, I would discard these 3 cards, and then I would draw 4 cards. I'd make 3 mana with Neheb's attack ability. 3 mana really isn't enough to combo off with Neheb. So, like, maybe I could play another spell. However, that is opening me up to getting attacked from all of these other creatures that are pretty aggressive. I do have a 1 ring, which is eating away at my life total. And I kind of want to hold this Deflecting Swat to protect Neheb. Not only protect Neheb, but if this Kogla attacks me, it would destroy my file, which is a combo piece, or it could destroy my Lightning Greaves, and then he could kill Neheb. So I'd use this, my plan was I would use this Deflecting Swat to, if he targets Neheb with, if he targets one of my artifacts with Kogla, I would use the Swat, change the target to the 1 ring, which is indestructible. And thus I would protect my Lightning Greaves, my Mox Diamond, my file. And I would take 7, but I would still keep an important card in play. So that was my plan. And after thinking about it, I decided to just play Neheb and play the Lightning Greaves and keep him back as a blocker. I can combo off next turn. I can draw 3 more cards with the 1 ring. And that's going to be a lot to combo off. And then, oh my god, to my shock, Bob here casts Warp World, which is horrible for me. I have some good permanents in this deck, but I would say like 50% of this deck is non-permanent spells. And yeah, this Warp World is not a good sign for me. However, he doesn't actually have enough red pips to cast it. He only has 1 snow-covered mountain, and he has a Mox Opal. So he only has 2 red, he needs 3. So players point this out, and he basically takes it back, plays this Treasonous Ogre, and then dumps a ton of life into the Treasonous Ogre to get enough mana for this Warp World. So that'd be what? Snow-covered mountain, Basalt Monolith for 4, or these 4, and then he has another 4, and so he needs to pay 12 life into the Treasonous Ogre. So anyway, we all Warp World. I hit 3 good cards and then 5 instants or sorceries. And those cards that I hit that aren't permanents go on the bottom of my deck. If they went into my graveyard, I wouldn't be so bad. I do have ways to take advantage of the graveyard. So let's just pause this and take a look at what happened here. So Bob, he wheeled into Archon of Emeria, Aven Mind Sensor, and Mox Diamond LED, 3 lands, and then he discarded a land for that. So that was a pretty good Warp World for him. Dio-sama got a 4/4, a Bristly Bill, and a Winding Constrictor. Those are combos, so that's pretty decent for him. He needs lands. He doesn't have any lands in hand, but a land is really good. And then Mountain Melon got 4 lands, a Gaddock Teague, and a Loyal Retainer. So actually pretty scary. I feel like I got the worst of this wheel. Sure, I have a Treasonous Ogre, but I got no lands and 2 pretty useless artifacts without lands and without my commander. All right, let's put it on fast speed again. So stack pieces are piling up here. We have only one spell a turn, and non-basics enter tapped. Aven Mind Sensor, so searching is shut off. And then Gaddock T can't cast non-creature spells with 4 or greater. And that's especially relevant for me because that shuts off cards like the One Ring and extra combat steps, which I use to combo off with Neheb. It's also annoying because, again, my opponents are starting to build up their blockers. This is a really good blocker against Neheb. And then I see that Kataki makes its return. I spent 2 cards to kill this card. And I have 2 artifacts in play. No mana to pay for them at all. Containment Construct is really good. Bag of Holding is really good when I'm discarding cards. They both effectively do the same thing. I write fuck in the chat because I'm fucked. I can decide whether I want to spend 6 life per permanent, per artifact to keep them around. And ultimately, I do decide against it. So he tries to cast a Nature's Claim again. You can only cast 1 spell. I just decide to sacrifice it, and I play this Barbarian Ring. And I do want to pause here and say that this was a misplay. I played this Barbarian Ring, and I spent it. I used it to I used it to play Neheb. It really should have entered tapped, because of the Archon of Emeria. Effectively, this would put me down 2 more life. I should be at 19 instead of 21. So that is a misplay. It doesn't actually affect the game at all. But just imagine that I'm at 2 less life. But I just recast Neheb, and I spent a lot of life to do that. I was at 36, so I spent 15 life to do it. But I really should have spent 18 to do it. I spent 15 life on this Ogre, and then 1 for the Barbarian Ring, because it deals a damage to you. This is a pretty cool card. I recently added this into the deck as well. And like, Neheb can beat people to death turn over turn, but it really does storm off. And so I have 2 big problems. I need to get rid of this Gaddock Teague. I've already kind of immunized myself against this Kataki Wars Wage because the artifacts that I played are dead. So I'm not super worried about that. But the Gaddock Teague is shutting off my extra combat steps and my cards like the One Ring. So that's really annoying. And then this is stopping me from casting multiple spells in a turn. So I need to get rid of these 2 cards. I don't search too much in this deck. I do have fetch lands because I have Morog, which is a landfall, got an extra combat step. So that's why I play fetch lands in this deck. So that is kind of annoying, but it's not as bad as these other 2. And then also remember that I have... Oh yeah, this doesn't happen yet, but I do have a Past in Flames in my hand, and so Gaddock Teague is stopping that from occurring. Here we have attacks from Inara and Bristly Bill. Mountain Melon elects to keep his life total high and just chump blocks the Inara with his Allosaurus Shepherd. That's fine with me. I'm pretty happy with that. It's just getting more creatures off the board. I'm also happy with the fact that Dio-sama Notice Me is attacking with his 5/5 and not just keeping it back to block. As it stands right now, I can attack with Neheb. Okay, so Mountain Melon draws, plays Delighted Halfling for his spell for the turn. I draw this card, Fear of Missing Out. And I play Conspiracy Theorist. And then I try to play Fear of Missing Out, but I eventually realized that I can only play 1 spell a turn, and I take the Fear of Missing Out back, and I just play this Conspiracy Theorist. So this card... And I do actually attack God with Neheb. And my theory there is if I'm attacking him and he wants to block and kill Neheb, he's going to have to block with Archon. He doesn't do that. I can always recast Neheb with more mana and by paying life into this Treasonous Ogre. But this Archon would be off the field, so I'd have to kind of like fight through it the hard way. And I discard my entire hand and draw 3 new cards. But I can only play 1 spell per turn, and I played the Conspiracy Theorist. So this Fear of Missing Out, when it enters, discard a card. When it attacks for the first time each turn, if there are 4 more card types among cards in your graveyard, untap target creature. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. I think I'm going to cut this card. It's just not good enough. I guess it's fine and constructed. Anyway, so Bob plays a Magus of the Wheel and then passes his turn. Yeah, I think I am going to cut this card. The issue is, if I could just play it and it says whenever you attack for the first time each turn, if there are 4 more, that'd be fine. But it effectively needs haste and delirium, and that's really annoying. So Dio-sama noticed me. He just didn't really do anything. He passes. Apparently they're arguing in the comment section. I don't really care. Mountain Melon plays a Raminac Excavator and then plays a Marsh Flats. Cracks it immediately. And he's looking at the top 4 cards. And he doesn't actually find anything. But, no, it's a shuffle. It's a way to get more cards into your deck. So I draw this Generator Servant, and I'm thinking right here, I can play this Mask of Memory. It would cost me a life for the Barbarian Ring. And then I would need to pay a mana for it every turn from this Kataki. I could play like a Rite of Flame. Like, I see that Bob has this Magus of the Wheel in play. He has no cards in hand, so I'm assuming he's going to activate it. I could play out this Generator Servant. But everything I do is costing me life, and cards in hand aren't going to be a bad thing in this deck, so I decide to just sit back and not do anything. I think this is a misplay here. I think I should have played this Mask of Memory. 1 mana per turn is definitely worth it, especially when I have a Conspiracy Theorist out. It's just like essentially drawing me 2 cards every turn, or every time I deal combat damage. And again, I just don't attack with Neheb. There's not really a point. I can't play extra combats. Like, maybe I could get like a 1 ring in play or something, but I'm at a low life total. My life is a resource, especially with this Treasonous Ogre out. I just want to stay back and block and just kind of see what happens, make my opponents spend resources against each other. So here we go. He draws an Eidolon of Rhetoric, which is another copy of the Archon of Emeria. He activates Magus of the Wheel, though, and he discards it. I draw pretty bad cards, all things considered, especially with this Gaddock Tegan play. I can't play like a Change of Fortune or anything. So he just activates Magus of the Wheel for 2 and then plays an Esper Sentinel. I don't know, it looks like he spent 3 or something. Dio-sama concedes. He wasn't really impacting the board anyway. It doesn't really change the game at all. So Mountain Melon, he plays an Azusa and then is able to just play like multiple lands, especially with this Ramunap Excavator. That's pretty annoying for him. All right, so my turn. I draw a Wheel of Misfortune. I have 7 cards in hand. I'm feeling good. I might be able to pull this off. Let's see what happens. I do play Mountain, and that is a pretty big, annoying misplay. I should always hold this in hand, especially if I'm deciding to attack. But I do think the time is right to attack with Neheb. So I swing, and I swing at God's bro, Bob. I swing at Bob. Let's pause this and take a look at what Bob has. He has a 1/1 Esper Sentinel. He has a 0/1 Rograk. He has a 2/3 Archon, so he has a total of 3 power so far, and then an Aven Mind Sensor. That's a total of 5 power. And he has 3, 4, 5, 6 toughness. So if he wants to like throw everything in front of Neheb, I won't be able to deal damage. I won't get the trigger. If he wants to just throw an Archon in front of Neheb and an Aven Mind Sensor, that would kill Neheb. I would kill both of his creatures and still deal combat damage. But it would get my creature out of play. He has a Rule of Law in hand, so he is thinking that he can block with this Archon and then play a replacement effect. And that's exactly what he does. So he does block with Archon and he blocks with Aven Mind Sensor. But what he doesn't realize is that I have this Barbarian Ring. And I have 7 or more cards in my deck. And this creature is only 1 toughness. Barbarian Ring deals 2 damage to target creature or player. So, a fun little synergy that I do is I sacrifice the Barbarian Ring to deal 2 damage to the Aven Mind Sensor, killing it, allowing me to both deal combat damage to Bob and get rid of his lock piece while keeping my combo piece in play. What happens next is beautiful. So, I deal 5 damage, 3 to the Archon, 2 to Bob. I discard my entire hand. I don't care. I have 7 cards in hand. None of them are that good. I'm discarding all of them. Remember, that was the major lock piece that was holding me back, but I do have a Gaddock T to contend with as well. So I discard my entire hand. That's 7 cards. And this is where the misplay of the land comes back to bite me, because if I had that in hand, I would have been able to discard it for 8 cards. It would have given me a mana anyway. But stupidly, I played it. Conspiracy Theorist does trigger, and I exile this Jeska's Will with it. This is I can exile a card that I discard from my graveyard, and I can cast it this turn. So I can't really like play lands with it, but I can play other spells. The Jeska's Will is 3, so it gets underneath Gaddock T. And what do I get? I get a few lands, a Coveted Jewel, Ruby Medallion is interesting, and this Wheel of Fortune. So I can play Ruby Medallion, that will save me some mana. I could play Magus of the Wheel, I could play Goblin Engineer. But I'm looking at this Wheel of Fortune. I have 7 mana in play. I have this Jeska's Will tucked underneath the Conspiracy Theorist. I should have another misplay here. I should wait on this Jeska's Will until after I Wheel of Fortune. It'll just get me 2 more mana. Right now, Bob is at 5 cards in hand. I could have been at 7. That 2 mana could be important, especially when I have like a Coveted Jewel. I could have used it to play with the Conspiracy Theorist and gotten even more. But I use it. I was at 7. This is net 2. It also exiles me 3 cards. I exile Morog, which is interesting. Morog definitely gets around Gaddock T, and it gets me an extra combat step. However, again, I misplayed by playing that land. I already made my land drop, so I can't trigger it. And I don't really have any other ways to do it. I have this Pinnacle Monk, which is interesting. Pinnacle Monk could get me back like a Jeska's Will or something. You can return an instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand. That's a new cool piece of tech for this deck. Morog is another one of those cards where it's an extra combat step, but it's not the greatest in the world. Okay, so essentially what I decide to do is play this Ruby Medallion. The Ruby Medallion is going to save me a lot of mana, and I don't need the card count because I'm casting this Wheel of Fortune as well. The question is, do I want to spend mana to cast any of these other cards? The Coveted Jewel is interesting. It's technically only 3 mana to play, but it draws me 3 cards, which is pretty good with Neheb when you can convert those cards into more cards and mana. But I end up deciding against the Coveted Jewel. I'm looking for something very specific here. So I play Wheel of Fortune. Again, I have the choice. I can tuck these cards underneath the Conspiracy Theorist, and I have the options to look at my new hand. And I see this new hand. This Last Chance is exactly what I was looking for. It's effectively gives me an extra combat step with Neheb without actually being an extra combat, and it gets underneath Gata Teague's lock. So I decide to not do anything because I am going to go pretty empty-handed here and use a lot of mana to essentially play all of the cards in my hand. Let's take a look at these cards that I have. So Chrome Mox, pretty solid. Sword of Fire and Ice. This is essentially whenever I deal combat damage, I draw a card. Really good with Neheb. Sword of Light and Shadow. Again, whenever I deal combat damage, I can return a creature to my hand, which is essentially drawing a card. This deck really cares about hand size. Then I have this Last Chance, extra combat, extra turn. Then I have this Desperate Ritual. And then I have this Pyroclasm. Now look at this. Pyroclasm's looking really juicy here. 1 power, or 1 toughness, 2 toughness, 2 toughness, 2 toughness. Pyroclasm wipes everything. But remember, Neheb he has 2 damage on him already. So before I play this Pyroclasm, I want to get this Sword of Fire and Ice onto Neheb. Not only does it buff his toughness, but it also gives him protection from red, so he wouldn't take any damage from it. So essentially, my plan now is to play out my entire hand. I played this Phial of Galadriel. I'm at 20 life. That means I have 6 mana from my Treasonous Ogre. I can go down to 2. Technically, I would be dead if I played this correctly. I should be at 18, so I really only have 5 mana from the Treasonous Ogre. But I actually don't really need it. I can play this Chrome Mox out now, exiling the Chaos Warp. And maybe I should wait on the Chrome Mox until I Pyroclasm, which is what I do. So I'm like, I think better of it, and I cast the Pyroclasm first. Actually, I cast the Sword of Fire and Ice first because I don't want Neheb to die. So I pay life into my Treasonous Ogre to get the Sword of Fire and Ice down, and then I use the Phial and 3 more life to equip it to Neheb. So I equip it. Then I play the Chrome Mox. Then I play the Pyroclasm, wiping the board. Then I want to get empty-handed. And the reason I want to get empty-handed is so that I can draw 2 cards with this Phial. So I spend another 9 life. I go from 18 to 9 to just cast this. Then I would draw 2 cards now. Because of the Phial, I'm empty-handed. I have a 7/6 Neheb. Bob is at 13 life. Mountain Melon is at 27 life. I drew 2 pretty mediocre cards. So what I do here is kind of fun. This is a really interesting synergy that I didn't notice before, but Treasonous Ogre, I can pay 3 life to add a red mana. This Sword of Light and Shadow, I gain 3 life whenever I deal combat damage, and this Phial says if I'm at less than 5 life, I gain twice as much life whenever I gain life. So effectively, if I go down to 3, this would get me if I go down to 3, this gets me to 6 life instead of just 3, which is another mana. That's why I spent life on this Treasonous Ogre instead of paying for it using my lands. And again, this is why the 2 life that I saved by ignoring the Archon rules, causing my land to enter tapped, effectively was meaningless. So now we have some cool triggers here. I can return a creature to my hand with Sword of Light and Shadow. I also gain 6 life. My Sword of Fire and Ice draws me a card. So I'm getting 2 cards just from dealing combat damage. Then I'm going to discard all 4 of those, and I'm going to draw 5 new cards. So this is a really cool synergy. I'm dealing 7 damage plus the 2 from the sword. So that's 9 total damage. Also, wait, this needs to be a 9 power. So I'm basically at 11 total damage, going from 2 cards to 5 cards with this attack step. And I have this Ruby Medallion in play, so all of my spells are cheaper. Again, every time I'm attacking and I'm at lower than 5 life, or if I'm at 5 or less life, I'm gaining double the amount of life with this sword. So I attack Mountain Melon, he concedes, he can see the writing on the wall. I get this Platinum Angel back, because remember, at the end of this turn I do lose the game, so I was thinking about it, but I decide on discarding it. And then I draw 5 cards, and I draw into the Savage Beating. So I can cast this Entwine for 7. Ruby Medallion makes it 6. And it gives me another combat phase and a double strike until end of turn. So then my Neheb would be a 9/8 with double strike, pro red, pro blue, pro black, pro white, and drawing me cards. And that was such a sweet game. Like, there were so many lock pieces. The world warp was crazy. And I was at like 1 permanent at one point with just the Treasonous Ogre, and I got to see so many of my cool new tech cards shine with this Phial of Galadriel, with the Barbarian Ring, Pyroclasm cleaning up, Jessica's Will doing work. It was a really sweet game all around, and just a lot of back and forth, people wheeling, people chaos warping the entire world. And ultimately Neheb pulls it out with a combo finish kill. And it's not even combo finish, like I'm just dealing straight up damage with combat damage and commander damage as well. Really cool stuff, all in the phase of about to die to my own last chance. About to die, yeah. To my last chance. And that was the card that I exiled. So I thought that was just like a super fun game, using Fury to wipe out people's... I don't even know how that Kataki got back into his deck, because World at War doesn't shuffle in, right? Yeah, I don't know how that got shuffled in. Maybe that guy cheated, but the Kataki really screwed with me, and it was very nice blowing up his entire board with Pyroclasm. That's why I play that card. Pyroclasm is sick in EDH. And yeah, just cool stuff, seeing like the interactions between the sword and Phial. Treasonous Ogre really standing out this game. I went from 37 life to 1 with the Treasonous Ogre. Like, effectively I should have been at 1. Savage Beating, again, being an all-star in this deck. And just also being able to like experiment with cards like Fear of Missing Out. This Pinnacle Monk, pretty cool. That could have been useful. Got to see some more like Morog stuff. I think I am probably going to cut it. And I'm on the fence about this Goblin Engineer as well. It has some uses, like getting the One Ring into my graveyard is really good, but I'm not a super graveyard-oriented deck, at least in terms of artifacts. I'm more like instant and sorcery based with Raku and Past in Flames. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed watching. Let me know if you want me to like play any other commanders. I'm looking for some more CEDH decks. Neheb is my favorite. He's super cool because he has different lines every game. And I am always tweaking him, but I like playing variety. My 2 favorite right now are Neheb and Sisay, Weatherlight Captain, with the 5 mana activate, search up a legendary. I think Sisay is really fun. I really like Neheb. But yeah, I'm looking for other stuff. I don't really like decks where it's just, okay, I have the cards necessary in my hand, I automatically win the game. Like, I'm not a super huge fan of Thassa's Oracle. I like building the combo. But yeah, I'm on the lookout for some more cool CEDH commanders. Anyway, hope you enjoyed today's gameplay. Thanks for watching.